thank you
For what?
for sticking around. Especially when he made it so hard for you.
So it took me retiring for you to say thanks? After all these years?
Oh my God.
Mugwump. Don't make a big deal of this.
I'm not. Actually, I was thinking it'll be nice to have you as my mom and not my boss. Well, I think Wolf feels one way about it, and Zach feels another way about it. I mean, I adore Donna Murphy. I love her so much, and she's not gone from the show. She'll be back. But that dynamic of Wolf and Muriel working together was so enjoyable for me as an actor. But I think, in the conversations that I've had with Michael Grassi, our showrunner, I think that, again, we spent so much of the first season watching Wolf deal with his trauma that originated in his family, his primary family of origin. I think Michael wanted to open up some new storytelling landscape for Wolf. And so I think that the vacuum that Muriel's absence creates at the hospital will be a very interesting thing to chart and to navigate. I also think that it gives space and room for Wolf to become his own doctor in a way that working with his mom always had him maybe up against some degree of expectation that he's no longer beholden to. And I think that's interesting. So, I think it's a new landscape in the hospital. And I think that for the time being, both of Wolf's parents are now elsewhere, and he gets to kind of focus on himself a little bit in the second season. I think that's welcome. Certainly for audiences, I think it'll be a nice change of pace, and we get to explore a whole different realm of stories as a result. No, he's going to have to figure out what that means and who that ends up being. It'll be interesting for people to see. Also, I think it's funny you mentioned that line of like, I'm looking forward to you being my mom and not my boss, was something that we came up with on the day of shooting that scene, because it felt like, I felt like it was something that Wolf needed to say, and that it is nice to consider exploring their relationship from a different angle and not from the angle of, Muriel having to be the messenger of the hospital mandates and dictates. And so I'm excited to see how that plays out. If I'm honest, I think he understands, and I think that he respects Josh's boundaries. I mean, I think he has to understand that he wasn't behaving in a way that was particularly respectful or particularly generous toward Josh at the end of the first season. And so I think anybody with any modicum of self-awareness has to recognize, like, okay, I get it. I've overstepped. I'm sending mixed signals. And I think that's where Wolf's coming from in that moment. I think he realizes that Josh deserves better. And maybe in time, Wolf will be able to provide that for him, but maybe not. I feel like he's a little bit sus about her motives and her intentions, and she always kind of turns up in moments of people's profound vulnerability, and I think Wolf is skeptical of somebody that could be perceived as taking advantage of people for their own benefit. Of course, Amelia's perspective is like, no, we offer this wonderful service and this wonderful place for people to come, and it's the difference between someone operating from a purely altruistic standpoint, which is where I think Wolf operates from generally, and someone who is obviously employed by a for-profit hospital. So I think that dynamic is a little bit off-putting for him. I think he smells the kind of underlying ulterior motive that she seems to be bringing with her into the hospital. Whether or not that ends up being true remains to be seen. Maybe she is, in fact, what she says she is. I don't really know the answer myself. Well, you see where it ends up in 6 months, so I think it'll be really interesting and fun for us to explore and to play how it gets us there. Bellamy's amazing, and we're so grateful to have her and really excited to bring her into the show. So far, we've only done those little kind of bookends for the episode, but I think as we get closer to that 6-month mark in the future, we're going to be spending more time at Hudson Oaks. We're going to be spending more time with her. She's actually coming back in the episode that we're about to start filming, which I'm really looking forward to. I mean, I think there's no one that Wolf trusts more than Carol, and probably at this point, including his parents. I do feel like she is someone that he unimpeachably relies on and can trust, and so I think bringing her with him for that moment of surrender, I think, is very telling, and I think they have each other's backs in a way that you can probably rest assured that it is the best place for him to be, at least in that moment, if she's advocating for it. Well, I really love, I think the Erica Wolf dynamic is the most, it's the most examined relationship between Wolf and the interns, and I think he sees himself in Erica, and I think that her persistence and her tireless commitment is something that Wolf has no choice but to recognize himself in. And I think, therefore, he understands that she's not doing it just for the sake of doing it. She's doing it because it's something she genuinely believes in. And that was another line that I threw into the mix when we were shooting a scene with Erica where she's like presenting all this information, and Wolf's like, why do you care so much? And Erica's basically like, because you taught us to care that much, and like, you're an incredible teacher, and like, I'm doing what you have told me to do. And the line that I threw in was like, well, I can't argue with my own advice. So it's like, in the end, Wolf does have to acquiesce to Erica's persistence, because he'd be a hypocrite if he didn't. Well, they're there for each other all the time in many, many different ways, but I think that storyline is a little bit more focused on Carol and the interns who are trying to find the answer to the question of who reported her, and also that storyline plays out a bit between her and Dr. Thorne as well. So, and Teddy and Josh Nichols. So that's actually more their territory. Wolf doesn't get so involved in the revelation of who reports Carol, because he's got other fish to fry. I think he finds different ways to communicate the way he's feeling to Josh throughout the course of the second season, and I think part of what he's learning is how to be present with his feelings and communicate them in real time. I think he's somebody who's lived a lot of his life not doing that, right? Like compartmentalizing and, intellectualizing and processing in different ways. And I think one of the catalysts that Josh is for Wolf is to kind of just be more present and be more comfortable in his own vulnerability. And so I think we see examples of that a few times already in the second season, and I think we'll continue to see more. Well, it wouldn't be a good drama if you knew the answer, would it? It's that classic will they, won't they? And I don't think anybody knows the answer at this point, but I think that they're drawn to each other, and I think that they learn how to relate to each other in a more complete and holistic way as a result of the experiences that they have in the first handful of episodes this season. Yeah, definitely. I mean, that was something that I felt early on. It's great to have that friction and that conflict. And John Clarence Stewart, I just love, who plays Anthony Thorne, is such a great addition to the show. And I love working with him. And I love the antagonizing kind of quality that exists between them. But I also feel like they're also adults, and they're also, they understand that they may do things differently, but they're both very great at what they do. And so I think that understanding that and coming into more alignment is something that I've been advocating for, and I think we are going to see actually pretty soon.